Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nutty Chess Tips. In this new video I'm going to show you a great attacking line when your opponent plays the Trompowsky. This will be good for Perk players as well as King's Indian players. So as usual, check it out. First moves on the table are d4, knight f6, and if they go c4 here, I usually go into a King's Indian setup with d6, or if I'm really adventurous, I go for e5, going for the Fajarowicz gambit. I'll stick a link in the cut above, so make sure you check it out. But now, what if they go bishop g5 here? Now, I used to go d5, looking to get the knight to d7, but in the Raptor version of the Trompowsky, they now take your pawn. When we take with our pawn, we've got double pawns. We're not losing here, it's just not comfortable. So now I actually like this move, which is knight e4. When you play knight e4, the most common moves you're going to see is bishop f4 and bishop h4. So I'll take you through these and show you how to deal with them. So first off, if bishop h4, now we come in strong with an attack with a g5. Now when they move to g3, now we come in with h5, and they either go f3 or h3, either way is the same idea. When they play h3, we have a similar situation like in the video on the Jabava bishop f5 line. We now take this bishop. When they take with the pawn, now we push c5. Now this looks similar to a Sicilian. When they take, we have this nice little move, which is queen d7, and as you can see by the highlighted arrows, we're eyeing up c5 and we're also eyeing up g3. If they make a developing move such as knight c3, now we just take the pawn on g3. When they move the king to d2, we now have this move, which is bishop g7. Eyeing up this knight. If they move e3, for instance, we now take the knight. They usually take with the pawn because obviously the king doesn't want to come into the center of the board. And now when they do this move, I like knight a6. Now, they can never take this knight. We say knights on the rim are dim, but not in this case. If they take, now take the pawn with the queen. With a check, they can never move the bishop or the queen to e2 because they simply drop a rook. e2 with the knight, and now we just take a bishop with our pawn. So this is just losing for white. Let's go back. So now what if f4 with the bishop? I've got to give some due to William Graff for this. I used to play d5 with the pawn and then go on to developing pieces, but I saw this move on William Graff's channel. He just plays e5, and look at this. This is a beautiful move. If they take with the bishop, now we have this move, which is knight c6. And now if they go on the counter attack with f3, we take this bishop, and this is never a good trade. If they take the knight on e4, we come in with a queen check on h4. They can never move this pawn because we simply take off the pawn on e4, and now we're eyeing up this rook. So they usually go king d2, but now this is even worse. We go knight check on c4. They have a few places they can move the king. If they move the king to c1, this is just losing. Can you spot the next move here? It's just kamikaze! Bishop a3. If they take, we now have queen g5 check. If they move, now we just go in for the kill with knight d2 check. If they then go king c1, we have knight f1 check. We just carry on taking pieces. King b1, and now knight d2 check. King c1, and now we take the pawn with another check. King b1, knight d2 check. King is just going back and forth. Knight f1 check. And now when the king moves back, we now go queen g2. And as you can see, the queen is covered. So if they ever move the knight, we just take another rook, and look at this, it's just winning here. So let's go back. What if king c3? If king c3, we just go knight e3, and now we're eyeing up the queen and the bishop. If queen moves to d3, move the queen back to h6 to guard the knight, and now if knight f3, we have this move, which is d5. If they take, we take back with the knight. If they now move c4, we have queen a6 check. The king takes, and now skadoosh, checkmate. So let's go back. What if pawn takes? If pawn takes, we have another nice gambiting move, which is d5. Now if they go en passant here, we now go queen f6, and look at this, we're just eyeing up this bishop, we're also eyeing up this pawn. So if queen c1 guarding the pawn and the bishop, we now have this move, which is bishop d6. If bishop goes to e3, we now have knight c6. And as you can see, look at the white's pieces. They've only got one developed, and all the rest are on the back rank. So now if they go knight f3, we now go bishop g4. And now if they go g3, looking to fianchetto the bishop, we now take off this knight. When they take back, we simply take with the queen, and look at this. They move the rook to g1, and now we castle on the queen side, and we have this open file with the rook. If the bishop moves to e2, we now bring the queen back to f5. If the pawn now threatens the queen, we now move to e5. If bishop threatens the queen, we take the bishop. Then when they take back, we take with the bishop. If they develop the knight, we now take the weak pawn on h2. They usually move to h1 with the rook, and now we take the knight. If they ever take this bishop, we have this lovely move, which is knight d4. If they ever take the knight, now they are just losing a rook with this check on c2 with the knight. So let's go back. So what if they take with the pawn? If they take with the pawn, now we just bring our bishop back to d6, and as you can see, we're just winning here. Look at this weak pawn structure, and we are ready to just dominate here. So let's go back. Now what if they just move back to g3? If they move back to g3, this is worse, because now we have this move, which is kamikaze! Bishop g3. When they take back, now we have this move, queen check. When the king moves to d1, we have this move, which is skadoosh. Queen f1 checkmate. So let's go back. And they can never take in this position, because again we just come in with the check. When the king slides over to d1, we have skadoosh. Checkmate again on f1. So that is not good for white. So let's go back. So now what if they get greedy and take the pawn? We cannot take the pawn straight away, because if we do, it's just checkmate on d8. So now we first go knight c6. Now if they go queen c1, now we can come in with the bishop to c5. Again, attacking chess. So if they now go e3, and now we have this move, which is kamikaze! Knight takes on f2. If the king doesn't take, we just take the rook, so the king takes, and now we have this move, which is queen takes the bishop, and the pawn can never take because the pawn is pinned by the bishop. So let's go back. What if here they go e3? Now I just like taking the pawn with the queen on b2. If they move to d2 with the knight, now we have this lovely move, which is knight c3, eyeing up this queen. The queen usually moves to c1, trying to threaten this queen, but now we go in for the kill with bishop a3, and now we're just winning a rook. If they take, we take back with the bishop, and look at this. So let's go back. So now what if bishop g3 here? If bishop g3, then now again we have this move, which is queen takes b2. If they go knight d2, here we go again. Kamikaze! Knight takes on d2, and they can't take the knight with the queen because the rook just falls. So they have to take with the king. We have this move, queen d4 check. If they move to c1, we just take the rook. So they usually move back to e1, and if they do this, now we go queen c3 check. And now queen has to move to block, and we just take the rook. Queen d1, and now we go queen takes a2, and we're just taking pieces here. If d takes c7, that is just a losing move. We've got mate in 3 with bishop b4. The forcing move here is pawn c3. We take, and now they have to move the queen to d2. We just go, oosh, queen d2, checkmate. So let's go back. If knight d2, I just recommend this move, queen e7. When they take, we take back. If they move the pawn to f3, we now, instead of moving the queen to h4, because this would just be a mistake on our part, because we'd be losing tempo with g3. I just recommend here, queen b4, check. If they move the king to e2, e takes f. When they take back with the f pawn, now we have a free bishop. g3, now we just take the pawn on e5. If they ever move the queen, don't worry about this, just do a little check with the bishop on c5. When the king moves to g2, now slide the queen back to e7. If they take, we just take back with the bishop, and look, we're just a piece up, and look how cramped these 3 pieces are in the corner. Let's go back. As I said before, we take the pawn, but now what if they go queen d4 here? We just check with the queen. If they then move back, now we have this move, which is queen takes on d1. And when they take back, now we're hitting the king and the rook. So I hope you've liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Check the other videos, and it's nice.